I suppose.
Sean, I just wanted to first of all ask you about, obviously there's going to be a change of manager at Manchester United, what you made of that situation, and again it goes back to what happened I suppose with the England job as well. We're not seeing an English manager, head coach linked with that role as well. What does that say about the state?
Well, firstly, I don't, no one wants to see, people in the game don't want to see managers getting the sack, but eventually that's the nature of the business, we all understand it. I think results hadn't gone to their liking, of course, over a period of time, and Man United certainly have a high demand. And I suppose, the only thing I would say is I think there's been a fair time scale for the manager and resources available for such a highly regarded manager to, sort of get a grip to what it is, I suppose. But like I say, it's hard. It's hard at any level. It's hard spending, not spending money, no money. You've got to win games, and eventually that's what you get judged on. But I wish him well. I'm sure there'll be something else big for him. I know that. And then secondly, I think we spoke about the England job. I think it's the way the modern game is now. And I don't think even, there's a time maybe when managers had to have a real depth of what they were doing to almost earn up the ladder of football to get jobs. And I think it's changed now. These coaches are coming out of, odd places, maybe not as experienced, not as much depth and all of them sort of things. And I think that's changed since it was manager rather than, coach rather than manager. I think that's a change in how the game's in. I know we discussed this recently that, the head coach role is different. So I don't always think clubs are looking for that depth. Well, that's how it seems. It might not be the case, but that's the impression I get from looking at the outside in. Whereas, when you look 15 years ago, it was management. So therefore the managers would probably be considered to have enough knowledge, to have enough depth of their experience to take maybe a club like Man United. So I think that's changed. I think a lot of the management side of the job is changed now at certain clubs where they're doing all that. There'll be someone who will do contracts, do the running of the club, do the finance, everything will be taken away and the manager purely coaches. So I think that's a modern view of, or it seems to me, a modern view of where it's going and possibly where it's at, or where it's at first actually, and where it might be going. So we'll have to wait and see. But anyway, back to the point. Sorry, a lot of waffle. I don't see it as being anything other than trying to get the right person to do the job. I'm not bothered whether English, foreign, doesn't matter to me. It's the right person, and they've deemed, seemingly, they've deemed the right person to do the job, and looks like it's going to be Amaral.
Have you any thoughts now on how English coaches get that body of work that attracts them to?
Well, you got to get the chance first of all, and that's hard enough. Only 20. If we're using the Premier League as an example, there's only 20 Premier League jobs available. We've also discussed recently about the amount of foreign ownership, so therefore that sometimes can slant their views on whether they want a foreign manager or an English manager or a British manager. And you've still got to be good. You've got to know what you're doing. You've got to be able to produce what people want. And often the perception is more important than the facts now. So you've got to be perceived to be good enough as well, not actually good enough, but just perceived to be good enough. And that's a change, a radical change I've noticed in the game over the last 10 years that I've been in the Premier League.
As you mentioned, ownership, standard question week in, week out.
Yeah, same as it was as last week and the week before that, the week before that, the week before that. Yeah, there's no, it's just same as it is, and waiting for things to take place if they're going to.
How do you assess where you're at though at the moment? 3 points off Newcastle, Bournemouth and Fulham, 4 points off Brentford and Spurs, unbeaten in 5.
Yeah, it's a balanced view of the situation. We didn't make a good start to the season. That was obvious. A lot of different challenges, which I know from inside the camp, especially injuries. I did say I thought we were getting players not just fit, but Premier League fit, and I think that's beginning to show with some of the performances. I think we were wide of our mark last time out, but we still got a valuable point. I think the work that the staff, myself, put in and the players, and I think it's beginning to show signs again, and we've been through this before where challenges come our way and we come through it, and I think that's an important part of sort of the fabric of what the club has been over the last few years and what it continues to be at this current time, and I think that the team have to show that, and I think we are doing once again, and a tough run without doubt. Not the results we wanted to start the season with, and then we slowly sort of begin to grind and play our way out of things, and we're showing signs of doing that. And we have done it before, so we just continue with the progress that we can make.
James Tarkowski said after the Fulham game in his first season here, if we'd gone down 1-0, we probably wouldn't have come back into that game. Do you go along with that? And if so, how much of a positive is that again to take from that result against Fulham?
Well, you try and set the scene, you try and set the culture and the environment. And I did mention after the game that relentless attitude towards winning. I think it can be built over time, and we've tried to do that, and we've shown real good signs of it in varying periods, and then other signs where we haven't, quite obviously even earlier this season. Well, we haven't seen games through, and we haven't gone to the last breath of the game, which I always say to the players. But against the last time out, we did do that. You know, we went into that game with a real strong mentality. We didn't perform well, but the second half, the relentlessness I preached to them was on show, I thought, because the last 7-8 minutes of the game, we started getting on the front foot, started reacting to the fact they'd scored. And it was a very positive reaction, and found a way to score a goal. And sometimes, you know, in my experience of the Premier League, I know that's valid. You know, there are certain teams that I mentioned straight afterwards. Certain teams I don't think, well, now and again you see Pep change their style at the very end of a game, but not so much. But most teams have to find a way, and we certainly do, of getting points and wins. And that's what I try and concentrate on. So I was pleased with the adaptation we had to show, and the players showed to go and get a point.
What difference does a goal like that make for better? I'm not thinking that immediately you think you're going to have to start in the next week, but at the same time, he's obviously not been scoring regularly. So for him to have that moment and show the emotion that he did after the game,
it builds belief and confidence. You know, in all players as a team when you're winning, but strikers, if you're winning or you're getting points from their goals, it's bound to bring a real good feel factor. That sense of involvement, sense of being part of it all. Like all here, he's had his question marks, but he's continuing to learn. He keeps working hard on the training ground, trained very well again today, so he's showing signs that he's fit, he's available, and he wants to play.
We see an opportunity over the next 2 games for Everton to really push towards those mid-table spots now as well. How do you see it, obviously, with Southampton and West Ham to come before the international break?
Yeah, I mean, you know, still tough games, awkward games, they all are. That, you know, different ways, of course. You know, Southampton fighting for their first win. Expectation maybe changed at West Ham after spending, different manager. Different challenges in the Premier League. I think the diversity of the Premier League is part of its magic. So yeah, back to us going down there. We've got to perform, I feel, better than we did in the last game, but we've equally got to show the same mentality. You know, the grit and determination to go down there and play well, but also have that strong jaw aligned with getting points and getting results and winning games. And we did that with a lot of good control against Ipswich. We've got to find that kind of performance level again down at Southampton as a start point or a restart.
Do you owe Southampton one for the cup?
No, I don't think of it like that. The last one doesn't guarantee the next one. It's about the clear-mindedness to go down there and deliver a performance.
And just to check on the injury situation, obviously we were at training today. No Dwight McNeil, no James Garner. How are they? How far away are they from being?
Dwight's got a chance. We're hopeful. He's done a bit of work with the physio team today, so we're hopeful on him. Duke as well had a situation, but he's been out there on the grass today, so we'll see how that reacts tomorrow. Jimmy Garner's very unfortunate. He's got a longer term injury. I mentioned last week about getting assessment from the specialists, and they've advised a period to slow him down again, take him off the grass. So we're going to have to wait and see on that one. But it's going to be weeks. So it's not going to be days. That's for sure. It's a back injury that they've just got to be a bit careful with. It's not aligned with his previous one. It's just one of them things. So we're going to have to be careful with it. But it is going to be a longer period one, not a short one.
When you say weeks, are you looking at more than 1 month?
Yeah, well, yeah, probably more so. You know, I mean, you got to remember he's 3 to 3.5 weeks. I can't remember the exact day when it sort of occurred, but that kind of head start, and then from here a number of weeks. Yeah, so it's going to be beyond a month. I'm pretty sure of that, but we'll see. We'll see how quickly it settles.
Shame for you. Shame for you.
Yeah, of course. And with Tim, you know, having a broken sort of or a stress bone in his foot, that's another challenge. With two good young midfield players out for us.
Sure.
Thanks, Vinny. We'll go to Stuart.
Sure. Is there a bit more concrete on Armando Breuer as well? You hope he's going to be available?
Yeah, he's back. He's working hard. His stats are good, but he's still with the sports science team. The crossover will start to occur over maybe even next week, where he just starts with the light stuff with us and starts joining warm-ups and possession games, and then builds into a kind of journey back to playing. But he's been out a fair while, so he will have to have some games in there as well.
With Branthwaite seemingly available, does the form of Keane and Tarkowski at centre back give you quite a nice sort of selection dilemma? Yeah,
and Jake's learning all the time. Jake's training very well as well. You know, I want that competitive element across the squad where we can have it, because we are a bit limited with numbers, but when we're all fit, then I think there is a very competitive squad, and I think that's good for them, and particularly the centre halves. Obviously, Jared had a real strong season last season, and with Tarky, and then Keno's having a strong start to this season and doing well, and Tarky's being his solid self that he is, and Jake's also in the pack because he's showing signs, particularly through training and his development. So it's a good four, I think.
Obviously, Southampton at the bottom.
Excuse me.
It's harder for teams who come up from the Championship to stay up than ever.
Well, I don't know. It's been a long time since I went up like that pathway. The gap seemingly, from what I'm told from some of the managers I know in the Championship, they feel the gap has got bigger, both financially and with the kind of quality levels of the teams and who can do what. I'm not exactly sure, but and it depends on, a lot's made at the minute about the parachute money. If you go down and you're in a position to reinvest, there's a fair chance if you reinvest well, you're going to be strong. But some clubs are not in the chance to reinvest. They have to bring the money in and then balance it all out again. So it depends on the situation of the club. But I would say it's an advantage if you come down, as long as the club's running on a good level, that you get them parachute payments. But sort of you've earned the right to be in there in the first place. So therefore, you should have an advantage, because that's the chance to get in the Premier League and hopefully stay. And if you don't, you come out of it, but you're strong again to try and get back in it. And that's the nature of the game.
Thanks, Stuart.
Hi Sean, Phil from Radio Merseyside. On Nathan Patterson, his career at Everton's been pretty stop-start, often through injury. Is it time, now that he's back available, back on the bench, that he gets a bit of a run in the team, and will it need a bit of patience when he does appear in the first team?
Yeah, it's time when he's ready to appear in the first team. He's had quite a serious injury. He's coming through it. He's working hard to come through it. I did mention, as he's still a quite young player, the game period coming out of that long injury would be of real use to him, and then getting him to a level when he's ready to compete and play in the first team. No one's holding anyone back here. If you're ready to play and you're deemed fit enough and well enough to play, and your form is good, then you play. That side of it's pretty simple.
I just wondered if something that has always intrigued me about Patterson was Seamus Coleman, for example. When he started out at Everton, he had a period of time on the right wing under David Moyes. Is it something you'd ever consider for Patterson, given he's quite an attacking fullback?
Yeah, I think maybe the players are very specific nowadays. When players in academies now, they talk about bringing up players in the number 6 role, number 8 role. The right back is a right back. I think that kind of open-mindedness of where players kind of changed a bit because they're brought from such a young age. One position. I personally don't believe in it. I think you should be experiencing lots of different positions, because you do find that a player can play another position. But a lot of these players are brought up with one position in mind. The odd one goes into a different position, but not as many in the old days as was in the old days. Because players could multitask pretty easily, I thought. Back to the point on Patterson, I think he is more of a right back. I think maybe he could do the job on the right side, but I think it would take him time to develop into that role.
Your form has picked up recently. I imagine confidence for the players has as well. With that in mind, do you think that you could maybe go a bit more on the front foot against teams that maybe are struggling in the division, or maybe in games at Goodison?
You've got to remember, you don't deliberately go on the front foot or deliberately not. You do it tactically. So, if you deem a team to have a lot of the ball but they don't actually penetrate you, then that's a tactical decision. If you deem a team to have a lot on the ball but you can break that early on in the passage of play, higher at the pitch, then that's a tactical decision. So depends what we decide from analysing the opposition, depends what we decide from our side of things, what suits us against the opposition. Inevitably, you've got to do the thing that wins, because when you do that right, all of you think that we're tactical geniuses. That's the simplicity of the game.
And James Tarkowski mentioned after the game last week that the team are running more than they did in the first few games of the season, which is obviously when the defeats came. Has it taken longer than you thought it would for the players to get up to speed fitness-wise?
Yeah, but we had so many disjointed weeks in pre-season, which I've documented clearly. We started off really well, good numbers, everyone fit, came back, really looked after themselves, and then we lost weeks, and you can lose an odd day, but losing players to two weeks, 10 days, 2 weeks, 3 weeks in pre-season, and that work is so important during pre-season. And when you miss it, of course, you go into the season and then you're playing catch-up all the time. So I think I mentioned at the start of the interview, I think there's a lot of players here who were nearly fit and now getting Premier League fit. Then your stats improve, and if your stats improve, there's a fair chance it correlates with better performances and therefore better results. I've been in a long time in the Premier League, and it's not a perfect analysis, but it's a pretty solid analysis. If you're running more than the opposition, you're pressing more than the opposition, and you're delivering physical performances more than the opposition, over time you will win games. If you can add in quality, that I think we have in organisation, then of course it's a better mixture to get success. And so we've been searching for true fitness. We're still not there yet. I've mentioned some of the injured players, but the ones who are fit are getting Premier League fit now, and I think that's showing through the performances.
Thanks, Phil. Any further questions in the open section before we move
Excuse
on?
me.